Okay, it being 7:30, for those people who've just arrived, there actually was this meeting is happening from various locations, obviously because none of us are in the same one, but lots of Brandon folks and some Winnipeg folks and some of like me up in the Interlake. And so there was a people to people meeting that ended a few minutes ago. People to people being a small volunteer NGO based in the Brandon area that funds a number of projects around the world. And the Marquis project, and based also in the Brandon area, that has partnered with people to people on a number of activities, including this is the second in a series of web talks. We had one back at the end of February on funding and partnership, and this one we have invited Home Gartaula, who probably everybody has met at one point or another in all the different organizations, to talk about, from his perspective and his experience, the effect of climate change on our world and specifically on agriculture. So Home and I had the pleasure for a number of years of working together, both at MCIC and then again at the same time at Menno Simons College at the University of Winnipeg. Nice to see you, Home. He was kind enough to give me a short biography, which I'm going to read in a very formal way. Dr. Gartaula, but you can call him Home, is a social scientist working as a theme leader for gender and social inclusion research at the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center.
We all go through that, right?
His area of research is gender and social inclusion in agriculture and food security, climate change, crop genetic resources and seed systems, rural-urban migration, and farmer well-being. So he studied in Nepal, which is what his country of origin is, and has an MSc and a PhD in social sciences, in sociology and anthropology of development from Wageningen University in the Netherlands. So before his current job, as I mentioned, he worked at MCIC and Menno Simons, and he and his family, particularly his family, are still in Winnipeg, and I think he bounces around the world, but with COVID, maybe he's bouncing a little bit less.
Yeah.
This year, no travel.
No travel. It's almost a blessing in a way, though, if you want to stay with your family.
Yeah.
So I'll pass it over to you, Home, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say. And then we're going to have some time for questions and answers and discussion. And Wayne is recording this.
Yep.
So don't be an athlete and use an F-bomb. And then this will be made available on the Marquis Project website. And we had a number of people say they couldn't make it this evening. So would we be recording it? So the answer is yes.
Zach, if I might interrupt, if we could
Sure.
ask everybody to mute themselves. If everybody could mute themselves, because we're getting some noise from one.
So if it makes your toes curl, sometimes
I think it's coming from Bryce's, but
As a host, you can mute everyone.
Touch
Where do I
power.
find that, Home?
so I just have a quiet evening. So, but I'm so glad you called. And this is perfect. When I emailed Ray, I will tell her.
Let me try from here. It doesn't, yeah. It doesn't allow me, but as a host, you can. You given me authority to share the screen. Right. So have you seen the mountain here now?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, the mountains are here. That's good.
Yeah, but this one is very little one. Okay. Thank you a lot for the nice introduction. Yes, I had a pleasure to work with him, with Janice, and with many people here in the call, directly or indirectly in many occasions. Yes, as Jack mentioned, I work for the International Maize and Wheat Improvement Center, and they have different programs at the department at the university setting. And our program is called Integrated Development Program. And I kind of lead the gender and social inclusion research portfolio for that organization. Yes, I am officially based in New Delhi, India, but for COVID, I have been working from home since last April 2020. So it's over a year now. I was hoping to go back anytime, but now the situation in India is getting even worse and globally. So I don't know when would be my next move. But anyway, thank you. And this is not presenting something about one topic or a research paper, which would have been more flow. But in this one, I have tried to compile some information that I'd like to share with you, and we'll have some discussion at the end. I know why. Okay. Yes. So talking about the impact of climate change on global agriculture, that is the topic that Jack has given me to talk about. I don't know how much will that be, but let me tell you the story. So you can see this kind of familiar picture of last week that that people from around the world, the leaders, they talked about how to respond to climate, the negative impacts of climate change on overall people's livelihood and in many sectors. And we are not touching all different sectors, but this is just a symbolic picture. I just wanted to let you know that these people were talking about how to limit the effect of global warming and within 1.5 degrees, and that is what they might be talking about. And since they talked that one on the very Earth Day, 22nd of April, which is 5 years after this Paris agreement, and they're talking about those things. And since they are talking about those land issues and different other elements of climate change, I just would like to talk a little bit, start with the land issues, and then we move on to agriculture. Yes. When you talk about this land and its connection with agriculture, you can see about 28% people work in agriculture sector globally. That is their bread and butter, and over 570 million farms are used for agricultural production. For this small and family-run small agriculture enterprises. I'm not talking about big industrial agriculture that has a different perspective and different issues. But my work is more on the small scale agriculture, and that is I find more comfortable to talk about. And about 12% of the world's agricultural land is small farms of less than 2 hectares. So you can see how numerous people around the world, they live their life within 2 hectares of land. And just to give you a perspective, like in Canada, those having less than 800 hectares of land are called small farmers. And in many countries in the world and many areas in the world, this is not like 800 hectares is much bigger chunk of land people would aspire to have. And about 75% of the world's agricultural land are family operated. So I'm just talking about these land issues, and you can imagine when the climate change hits the earth, hits the world, it does impact in many other sectors, but particularly this smallholder farming sector and agricultural sector might be more critical for their own livelihood, for their own life, but at the same time, the people who depend on the food produced by those farmers, that is also another complication this climate change would bring in. Yes, as you see in this figure, there are a huge number of people rely on agriculture and land for their livelihood, and also the other people who depend on food. They also are affected by the impact of climate change. So in today's talk, we'll basically discuss on these things and how climate change impacts agriculture in general in many ways. Sorry, I was a little bit too quick to change my slides. And what are some of the consequences that we have observed working in this field of the impact of climate change, and what is happening, especially different centers within CGIAR. CGIAR is the Consultative Group for International Agricultural Research. That is the acronym used as CGIAR, but now people have even stopped using the long form. They're just called CGIAR. And what are some of the ways we are working with farmers to tackle the negative impacts of climate change? So that is basically I would be talking about today. So as you see in the figure, and climate change, or the Earth temperature is increasing. It's on the rise, and as the temperature increases, and you can see the model diagram graph from like historical diagram, the predicted change in the Earth's surface temperature, and the second picture is on the precipitation. So these are the kind of indicative change of global temperature. But as this temperature changes, you can see there are changes in precipitation, there are changes in other elements of climate, and this change occur. The usual climate change is probably natural, but what is happening is the human-induced climate change, which is changing the temperature, changing the precipitation, changing the rainfall pattern, the unpredictable droughts, floods, glacier depletion, sea level rise. You can see so many things that are basically caused by the development activities or the agricultural activities done by human beings. So that those are the issues, kind of a little bit more critical than like the usual climate change, which has been there for generations and for centuries. And some of the consequences we'll be talking about little in detail later on, but as a consequence, like as a result of these changing in temperature and precipitation, the grain yield would be changed, and in some areas the winters would be shorter and dry, summer would be longer, and in some areas, because of the heavy flood, the rice production could be less, and many things you can think of, like we produce from the field, and if there is no rain and if there is unpredictable temperature, and that definitely hits the yield and production. And when you talk about land, earlier I showed you the flat land of Nepal. So this is kind of a picture that would come to people's head when they think about Nepal, that the like high mountains and small villages hanging around those mountain terraces. And as we know, the reason to present this picture is just to show the connection between human being and the land, and if that is changed because of climate, like irregular rainfall and increasing temperature, and the life of these poor like smallholder farmers, women, children who are based in those smaller agricultural livelihoods will definitely have much more impact. And it of course provides us, like land provides us food, feed, fiber, fuel, and fresh water, and many other fuel we need to live our life. And it is basically a basis of our existence. And land is where, apart from some hydroponic or lab-based food, I think majority of agriculture, like the food production, it's done on land. Let me quickly check the chat. I don't know if they are to me. Okay. Yeah. So that is, and the land, another reason to put this land is that land can be a basis, a major contributor for the greenhouse gas emissions. But if we manage properly, it can also be a basis to absorb the carbon and absorb those greenhouse gases, and they can also be part of the solution. If you look at this figure, for example, if we do not care about land, and we keep taking the trees away from the land, and if we do not do proper managing the resources, the land, it definitely causes lots of greenhouse gas emissions. But at the same time, if we plant trees and if we do our agriculture more properly, we'll talk about the climate smart agriculture a little later, and it can, like land can also be part of the solution. And yeah, that is, and it also provides kind of opportunity for mitigating the negative impacts of climate change, basically the greenhouse gas emissions. So this is the graphics from the scenario they presented from the United States. And when you talk about agriculture and climate change, you might, this common figure is that about 23% of global human-caused greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. So 23%, almost a quarter of the whole greenhouse gas emissions are they come from agriculture, forestry, and the related activities. And it is the second largest employer of the global population after services, which is another interesting statistics, employing about 24% people, generating about 24% of employment. And this is, as we saw in the previous slide, it is an important contributor for the greenhouse gas emissions, but at the same time, it can provide opportunities for solution, opportunities for mitigation. So that is, and if you look at like after service, agriculture provides employment for that majority of people. And when there are some bad impacts of climate change on agriculture, so there is huge issues. We can, like, there could be food insecurity, hunger, and job loss. So many things you can think about. And this is a small figure. It's a much more complex figure, but just what I want to point it out here is that the change in temperature causes changes in crop yield. And this scenario of the 4 major crops grown in the world, rice, wheat, maize, and soybean, you can see in almost all the crops, every changes in temperature, there is a decrease in yield. So this is what I just wanted to show you, that and if the overall temperature of the earth would like keep increasing every year, and after some years the whole earth will be unproductive unless you keep everything inside a greenhouse and grow your crop. But naturally they have to have certain temperature, precipitation, and all those agroclimatic conditions suitable for the crops to grow. But if the temperature increases up to a certain time, of course the yield will increase. But after certain temperature, they won't exist, or they won't exist if it is severe case. But in many cases, I mean, the yield loss would be the first symptom they would exert. And what are the consequences we can see talking about different how climate change would impact agriculture? Of course, as we saw in the picture in our previous slide, that it would change the crop yield. In many cases, it is the reduction in the yield, and smallholder poor farmers are basically in the resource poor areas, women farmers, women in households, they are the most vulnerable to food insecurity because of the lack of access to lack of access to have that coping mechanism properly, and lack of sufficient or efficient resources to cope with those changes, and increase the production cost. Of course, as I indicated, that after some time, if the temperature keep growing or keep increasing, then naturally, like natural crop production will less, and we have to have artificial environment created inside the greenhouses. Some areas could also gain from warm temperature, especially in the Canadian context. It might be some good signs that the prairie would face longer growing season, and the permafrost could be thawed. But I'm not too sure if that is a good signal, because you can and it may create more complex challenges up in the north if the temperature keeps growing. And this can be short fixes, but might create longer term problem in the later on. So these are, like, it is very vast topic, as I already admitted in the beginning, but these are a couple of consequences, a couple of impacts that climate change would cause to smallholder farmers and in the agriculture sector. But that also this situation also creates some opportunities for innovation. As you may also know that crisis is mother of invention. So people like we see the negative impacts of climate change. It is impacting the crop yield. It is impacting it is impacting biodiversity. It is impacting many other sectors, but it is also giving a challenge to our scientists, to our breeders, to work more on the varieties that would skip the negative impacts of climate change. Like in this project that I am currently involved in, the Accelerating Genetic Gains in Maize and Wheat, funded by several funders. We are working on genetic improvement of maize and wheat. Basically, our scientists, they breed for stress tolerance, biotic and abiotic. And it's a kind of race between the like climate change and the plant breeders, for example, like the disease infestation, pest occurrence, like the locust issue you might have heard in India last year. It was huge. So those issues might be as a consequence of irregular pattern of rainfall, irregular pattern of weather conditions, unpredicted weather conditions, and that is how different issues are happening. And our scientists are working to develop varieties that could be tolerant to drought, that could be tolerant to disease, and that is the priority. And if you look at the priority of breeding in the past 30-40 years, at that time, perhaps the priority was more to grow. The priority of breeding program would be growing more so that the food supply will increase, and that would aid to the food basket. But now with this changing climate, that priority, that kind of focusing only on yield improvement, the breeding program would not thrust much, would not thrive much, because the priority, like the climate is changing so fast that they have to kind of adjust with their breeding program. So that is one thing that our scientists are doing to tackle the negative impact of climate change. And other part is the whole issues around technology, like what could be the technologies that would help mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions, that would help mitigate the negative impact of climate change. And this kind of agriculture, we call it climate smart agriculture or climate smart farming, and that includes many different practices and management practices and decisions, knowledge systems. But I have just listed a couple of them. And at the end of this presentation, I'll show you a short video that will give a picture of one of the CGIAR program on climate change in agriculture. You can see that, and I'm just talking about some of the aspects of in two ways. Like the climate change has challenged our scientists to work towards developing new varieties and developing new technology, or more kind of adaptive technologies. One of the issues is one of the aspects of agriculture we are talking about is the conservation agriculture. That includes minimum soil disturbance, increasing crop diversification or plant diversification, and not removing straws from the farm, which keeps the soil in the natural condition, and that will that will preserve the moisture, that will conserve the soil, and that will have like kind of less fossil fuel burning, because zero tillage means one tillage, and they don't do multiple tillage, means they save fuel, they save energy, so many things, and we'll talk about that a little later. And other some technologies like CGI working is on like mechanical transplanted rice, mini tillers, laser land levelers, so many technologies that would help farmers saving their energy, but at the same time tackling the impact of climate change. Another opportunity for innovation, I just would like to talk about this small research project that we did in India last year. Some of those climate smart technological interventions, it causes labor saving and at the same time more towards gender equality. For example, if you think of rice transplanting, manual transplanting is in general women's job. If we introduce direct seeded rice, DSR, or mechanical transplanted rice, MTR, that will not only mitigate the greenhouse gas emissions, but it also saves labor. And that labor is basically women's labor, because that is like the weeding is, the transplanting and weeding are in general women's task if it is in the manual technology. And we had calculated, we had kind of predicted the India-wide scenario, and it shows that these two technologies, the DSR, the direct seeded rice and mechanical transplanted rice, they have a capacity to mitigate about 41 million ton carbon dioxide equivalent greenhouse gas emissions. And at the same time, they also have potential to save about 1.4 billion labor days. And majority and most of those labor days are women's. So in that sense, this technology will save women's time and labor drudgery. That is one of our findings. But at the same time, a country like India, where majority of like these kind of jobs are taken up by women, and if we introduce those technologies, that would take, and for many women, this can be their means of livelihood. So and that's why it is not that black and white. It is not that simple to solve these kind of problems. But government can think of some ideas to make use of that surplus labor or the saved labor to use in somewhere else. So that kind of another kind of opportunities can be created because of the introduction of some of those labor saving or climate smart technologies. And another ideas the CGIAR is working on is the climate smart agriculture. So it's the climate smart agriculture is a combination of so many elements. It includes technology, it includes management system and what it does and it will eventually it will increase productivity and income, and at the same time it strengthens it builds on the resilience to climate change and variability. So this is the in general issue with climate smart agriculture. And another area that CGIAR scientists are working is helping small farmers and helping small communities to make the climate smart villages. And if you look at this, there's this infographic, you can see climate smart village or climate smart farm can be so inclusive, and it would address so many different dimensions of climate climate change. So if we talk about weather, issues, it can include the seasonal weather forecast, the ICT-based agro advisories, index-based insurance, so many issues, and water smart aquifer recharge. If you think of like rainwater harvesting, community management, irrigation, laser leveling, and on-farm water management things, and carbon start more in the long term, how to build carbon in our soil. It can be combination of agroforestry. I talked about the conservation agriculture, and conservation tillage is part of that. Land use systems, and like integrating agricultural livestock together, and making nitrogen more usable form, can be site-specific nutrient management, precision fertilizers, catch cropping and legumes, or all natural way of increasing soil fertility, energy smart, knowledge smart, which basically is to build on farmers' indigenous knowledge and farmers' understanding about their farming, and integrating that with the expert or scientific knowledge that with their indigenous system. And it includes kind of farmer to farmer learning, farmers networks on adaptation technologies, seed and fodder banks, market information, and off-farm risk management and kitchen garden. And this concept is to be more participatory and more inclusive of women farmers, inclusive of Dalit farmers, inclusive of people from different social, economic, and cultural background. So this is another concept that CGI are pushing forward. And there are not only CGI, there are many organizations around the world. They talk about climate smart agriculture. They talk about climate smart villages. They talk about genetic innovation, and all these initiatives are to, of course, to protect farmers at the same time, to tackle the negative externalities of climate change. And it definitely can protect farmers. I have a quick short video of about 5 minutes that will give climate smart village as a project that has been going on in India, especially in Haryana, Punjab areas, and in Bihar. And I'm going to show you, and I hope it will work.
I don't think we have any sound home.
The sound is non-home. He's unmuted now. Home, can you hear us? There's no sound.
Oh, sorry, you are not hearing the sound of
No,
the video?
No,
that's right.
Ah, okay. Then there is no use of,
You can just enable it before you share the video. Like when you go to share the video home, you should be able to just share your sound. It's a little, I can't remember if it's at the top or the bottom, but that might.
share a sound.
You might have to stop and then.
Share sound,
start again.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go back. Sorry. You could have banged me. Are you able to hear now?
Yes.
Okay.
Changing climate, such as delayed monsoon, occasional floods, calls for a paradigm shift in how we practice agriculture and plan to feed the world. The magnitude of the problem requires actions that can benefit both farmers and society.
It's a very great challenge that we have to prepare ourselves now to meet the climate risks in a way which is environmentally safe, environmentally sustainable.
The CGIAR research program on climate change, agriculture and food security, CCAFS, is working with rural communities and partners to develop climate-smart villages.
These are sites where this diverse range of stakeholders converge to strategize about the best interventions that will fit for the local context.
The idea is for climate-smart technologies and climate information services to be integrated into village development plans, using local knowledge which is supported by local institutions. The key focus in climate-smart villages is to enhance climate literacy among farmers and other stakeholders, introduce technological and institutional interventions in agriculture that can enhance production, income, and climate resilience and adaptation. At present, climate-smart village models are being implemented in West Africa, East Africa, and South Asia. In India, for instance, such climate-smart villages are located in the states of Bihar and Haryana, which are prone to frequent droughts and floods. Climate Smart Village project starts with the creation of community groups consisting of farmers, researchers, and village officials. They begin by prioritizing climate-smart technologies that can be adopted by the farmers. Feasibility studies are undertaken. The process for such studies strives to be participatory and inclusive. CCAFS has conducted several capacity building workshops on gender and climate change for farmers in climate-smart villages.
और जिसमें वो उनको ये बताएगा कि किस तरीके से महिलाएं अभी ये जो जलवायु परिवर्तन से हो रहे हैं कृषि का जो पैदावार होना चाहिए वो जितना होना चाहिए उस मात्रा में नहीं हो रहा है.
Farmers in climate-smart villages implement a range of technological and institutional interventions, such as value-added services related to weather forecasts, index-based insurance schemes, efficient irrigation management strategies, adapted cultivars, conservation agriculture-based management practices, and a range of other low greenhouse gas emitting options.
ओवरऑल जो हमारे को प्रोडक्शन के अंदर जो फ़र्क आया क्लाइमेट स्मार्ट जो है इसके अंदर पहले जैसे था पहले हमारे इसमें ईल्ड वगैरह में भी फ़र्क था और फसलों में भी फ़र्क था. जैसे हमने नई नई तकनीकें इससे जब से हमारे गांव में हमने ये अडॉप्ट की हैं तब से हमारे को इसका बहुत फ़ायदा मिल रहा है और हम कोशिश करेंगे आगे भी हम इसी तरह से करते रहें और किसानों को फ़ायदा मिलता रहे.
By adopting strategies that maximize synergies between adaptation, mitigation, food production and sustainable development, Climate Smart Villages has led an example by increasing food production while remaining environmentally sustainable.
CCAFS is aiming to reach 10 million farmers or even more who need this type of intervention. So the idea is that we should be working with the national governments, the state governments, the local governments, and try to bring them this whole package that they should be able to upscale.
Farmers can now make the right decisions to counter climate-induced problems and contribute to global food security and a cleaner environment.
Yeah, sorry of that little interruption there because of the technical glitch over there. Yeah, so those are the not the exhaustive of what we do, but many of those technologies are already tested, and some of them are already tested, some of them are in the process of testing and in the process of scaling. But in general, that is our kind of approach, or CGI's approach to tackle climate change. I think that is my second last slide, and I just would like to thank you for your interest and for being with me for this presentation. Thank you so much. Over to you, Jack, or whoever.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Home. That was really interesting. If you look at the chat, there was a question from Paul about the soy chart.
Mm-hmm.
What does the soy chart mean with yield loss of 200 to 300%?
Okay. Okay, yeah, this one is as the temperature goes up, the yield loss, and these are the change in yield loss. So these are the like 0% change, and if you go down, these are percentage yield loss. And in the soybean, and they are more sensitive to temperature, I would say. Thank you. Any
other question?
Ian had
You
a
can
question.
put them in the chat or can ask.
Hello.
Yes.
My name is Ian Robinson. Am I coming through on the mic?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Looks like there's a lot of information there. There's a bit of an attitude that mitigation and living with the climate issue is a goal. However, farmers have been in existence for 10,000 years. And it's in the last 100 years that we've been using a lot of inputs, particularly nitrogen fertilizer and fossil fuel. And the thing about that is that it's the inputs that are causing the CO2 release from farming. It's not farming. The trend line, when you track the trends, there are fewer people raising our food. That is one of the problems. We need to raise up and value the work that's done to raise that food. In Canada, farmers are less than 2% of the population. This is a huge problem. We're not taking the proper care of the soil. We're losing our organic matter. Our productivity is becoming challenged and will be further challenged with temperature increase in the next 20 or 30 years and beyond, unless we can tackle the climate, and it's a climate emergency. I'll speak in book terms. Seth Klein has a book, it's called A Good War. In the book, he talks about the world needing a World War II effort to mobilize and reduce our CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions. And all of this is completely doable. It will take a bit of work, a reorganization, but there are a lot of good jobs in agriculture raising food. One of the concepts is that like a food shed, and China, I think, has done that over the years. They raise their food in a region around the city. They're not transporting food long distance. India, of course, is raising a lot of its food locally. Canada imports a lot of food that's very expensive, a lot of food miles, a big problem. Another book, Food First, was warning of the issue years ago in terms of the food systems. A recently written book called Civilization Critical by Darren Qualman. It puts all of our nutrients that are essential for raising food, puts them on a graph, and it shows how we've been using those nutrients, nitrogen, the carbon, the phosphorus, and everything else, the energy of people, the fossil energy. We're able to measure that, put that all on graphs. When you look at the trends, then it gives you an idea where we can start to make a difference. Seed breeding has been a benefit, but along with the seed breeding, we're adding more nitrogen, and the nitrogen is part of the trouble. And I know you recognize that, in what you've had in your slides there, and working with the local knowledge is a big point. So the same thing here in Canada, we're trying to do regenerative agriculture and look at things like that. So I don't know if you want to comment, that's quite a bit, but thanks.
Yeah, I think you raised very critical points about the whole history of agriculture and how it has been becoming a problem. Like if you look at the agriculture in the past 70, 80 years, like agriculture has been done for thousands of years. You have already mentioned that. But even if you look at like the past less than a century, the world was going into famine that time, and probably the Green Revolution that put a lot of effort for high yielding varieties and high input agriculture, and that includes the chemical fertilizers and those things, and that might have undermined some of the indigenous knowledge and the local knowledge issues, and definitely and that is part of the problem now, is that it paid little less attention to the environmental challenges that the whole package of Green Revolution would bring in, and that is, I think I totally agree with you, and agriculture in the past would not have been that much of a problem, and also the increasing population also intrigued to produce more. That is another issue. And talking about people moving away from agriculture, I indicated in the beginning of this presentation that in some of the countries like Nepal, the economy of scale of smallholder, it's already smallholder, and the people like especially the younger generation, they don't want to stay in agriculture. They don't want to work on agriculture, and still Nepal's population depend on agriculture is about 60% now. It used to be over 80, 90% before. Now people are gradually moving away from agriculture, and that is, I don't know to what extent that is a good thing. But when it comes to the situation like in Canada, 2% or less than 2%, or I think 2.5% or so. In developed countries, there are very few people who are engaged in agriculture. If you look at globally, that creates another problem of food transportation and food mileage you already mentioned. And that is, on one hand, they are not produced locally, which means that they are not using the resource they have. At the same time, they are importing food from elsewhere, which adds to the to the more carbon burning, more greenhouse gas emissions. And I completely agree with you. And I have actually written another paper on the use of indigenous knowledge and how it would help food literacy among the school children in Nepal. So this is a very interesting topic, I think, and very very thoughtful idea about raising awareness and going local and recognizing the indigenous knowledge, local knowledge that is around agriculture. Yeah, I agree with you. Thank you for the insights.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Any other thoughts or questions? We still have a few minutes.
Yeah, I do have one or two questions.
Great.
My first question is just about the seed varieties that the CGIAR are breeding that are more climate resilient that you had talked about. I'm curious to know what the ownership of those seeds are. Are those owned by CGIAR, or do you work with other market actors so that they can pick those up and distribute them throughout their market systems, or what is the ownership structure of that?
Okay, thank you. I think the CGIAR, I can talk. I don't have the whole picture, but I can talk a little bit about how the maize and wheat breeding program works. That is where I work. CGIAR is the international public organization, and we do not release any variety. CGIAR's CIMMYT's work and other CG centers too. Our scientists, breeders, work at the genotype level, and they develop germplasm. They breed for the germplasm, and they partner with the national seed system, and they, like, for example, in Mexico, we have 3 research stations. One is in Obregon, near American border. Other one is in Toluca, and other one is third one is in Mexico, the CIMMYT's headquarters near Mexico City. And they have a subtle breeding program, and they breed varieties and produce genotypes, and that is publicly accessible. There is no patent on CIMMYT's variety. We are funded by the governments, and we are funded by the foundations. But so the seeds that CIMMYT has developed, anybody who wants to do the research or who wants to use that to test on their farm, I think there is certain procedure that anybody can have access to those seeds. And once and those seeds and our breeders, and we will work with the national partners. For example, in India, we work with ICR, Indian Council for Agricultural Research. In Nepal, Nepal Agricultural Research Council. Pakistan, the same organization, Pakistan Agricultural Research Council, Bangladesh, and wherever you work, like Ethiopia, all the partner countries, they have their national system, and our breeders, they work with the national breeders, and they do phenotyping experiments in the farm. We have farms in India, we have farms in not many other countries, but I know we have farms in India, and those seeds, when they test locally, when they found that, okay, this variety now can be released, and the national system are the one who release the varieties. So there is no, like, CIMMYT doesn't have, I don't think CIMMYT has any patent on the seeds. It is publicly accessible germplasm.
Okay, that's a very good and complete answer. Thank you for that.
Did you have another question, Stephen?
Yeah, actually I did. A follow-up to that plus an additional question. My follow-up would just be then, do you find that there's uptake for small farmers on the use of those seeds, or are those publicly distributed, bred and distributed seeds pushed out by varieties, pushed by market actors? Because I've known that living in an agricultural community and then working internationally, I've seen how small farmers and large farmers sometimes or often adopt the varieties pushed by market actors, and others get pushed to the side. So that would be just a follow up on that point. And my other question is related to local varieties. And I was living in Southeast Asia in Laos for a while, and there are many different varieties that were developed over long periods of time in niche environments, and responsive to, because it's a very hilly area and the agroecological zones change like all over the place. And so there's lots of varieties all over the place grown that match those zones. But when breeding, I imagine you breed one variety and then that gets distributed across a whole region. So how does your system manage this issue of like all these various varieties that are niche to zones versus breeding general varieties that have these traits for resilience for environmental change? So there's that challenge there. I'm not sure how you manage that. That's a big challenge, I think. And then also my other point about uptake.
Yes. In terms of uptake, I have like the one of the projects I showed in my presentation. It is under genetic gains, and like CGIAR has long been pretty much biophysical oriented breeding program we have, and social science has been pushing forward into looking at those seed delivery pathways, looking at those developing product profiles for the breeding programs. That has, I think, been that has not been for a long time, I'd say. In RTV, I know there are some work going on in maize sector, since it is huge, privately owned business. That I can see your point, how like the what is called hybrid maize are pushed to farmers field, hybrid varieties, and that is a little bit less in terms of wheat, because it is wheat is kind of self-pollinated, and there is not much control of the private sector compared to maize. That is, I think that is still a challenge, and in fact, I have been discussing with farmers, with breeders about the same issue that you have just mentioned, about how to manage those issues. Like a breeding program cannot breed for a market segment of 1 or 2 communities, a market segment of few villages, and they look at like mega environment. They look at like South Asia as one environment, or irrigated wheat as another environment. It is a challenge for the commercial crop. But I have, based on my previous work on the small millets, which could be somehow close to what you might be referring to with the niche environment, like in Nepal, in India, there are many areas where these small millets thrive, and they have never been into the eyes of these breeding programs. All those like the breeding programs are basically for the I would say the green revolution promoted commercial crops, and I think that is kind of I don't have answer to your questions, but what I can say that we are trying to work with the breeders to find a better mechanism to feed into the breeding program what are the farmers' preferences, what are the farmers' needs, and what could be the product profile that they would breed for. At the same time, we are also looking into how can be the seed delivery pathway, the seed delivery system can be more effective, efficient, and inclusive, that would meet and that would cater the demands of women farmers, smallholders, and the farmers who do not have equal access to the big farmers in Punjab, Haryana, for example, or in other countries. Yeah, I don't know if I answered your.
Yeah, you answered my question. Thank you for that.
Okay, any other questions?
If I could, Zach, thanks. Very briefly, in Canada, our canola, our corn, and our soybean seed approaches $100 an acre when you add in all the fees. This is extreme cost because of lawyers between myself and those seeds. In the wheat, we have costs would be around $15 to $25 an acre, which is an increase over several years ago. Everybody in the cereal crops grows the popular variety, and they become used quite extensively. The current variety is Brandon. It's a shorter stature wheat with very little straw, and this is something that they say is better for in a drought condition. But in a drought condition, you have it even shorter wheat, and it makes it very difficult for some people to harvest that. A lot of people, of course, are using straight cutting. It doesn't matter the height, but the height of the wheat is for a mixed farmer. We need that straw to be able to use in our winter for the cattle for bedding. So that the purpose of the wheat breeding has been hijacked by industrial agriculture and by lawyers. And the trade, the international trade, and the people that do the trading, they don't care how much we raise. They just want us to raise more because they like to handle the tons. And we end up across the world, we end up wasting a lot of that for no reason. And that adds to the climate issue. So there's a whole discussion about what's actually needed. And, if we put this land to a different purpose, we could raise a lot more vegetable crops and potatoes and far more food if we wanted to. It's a matter of the choice of policy. Along with that, all of that I just described, we're losing the birds, wildlife, the insects, the beneficial insects, the pest insects are taking over and causing the use of a great deal more pesticides and a great deal more problems. So we're setting ourselves up for a rather difficult future.
Yeah.
And so I'd draw your attention to that. Thanks.
Yeah, and you are involved in agriculture for a long time, and you must have realized that how much the biodiversity on the farmland has been depleted in the past 50 years. Yeah.
Yeah, great point. Other questions? I see a hand up by what says iPhone.
Hi, it's me. My name's Maggie Zen. I recently joined MCIC. Nice to see people sharing the knowledge. Thank you for Dr. especially sharing your experience. I'd really like to ask the question about the gender equality. I'm glad you mentioned about how the technology innovation can support women. Can you elaborate a little bit more what more can be done also to really empower women and from gender equality perspective?
Okay, thank you. It's a great question. That's what we are trying to understand. We are trying to work with the women in the village, and we are trying to understand the norms around agriculture, the image of farmers being a macho man, and in the imagery of policymakers has always been a farmer, and there is no woman come to the picture, and that changed the whole policy making process and the technology development issues, and whom you are thinking of when you are designing some technologies, and that is something more at the higher level or broader level policy issues. Other thing, like the technological intervention, I mentioned about direct seeded rice and mechanical transplanted rice. Those are the examples that those technologies have dual impact. They can mitigate greenhouse gas emissions at the same time. They are labor saving technologies. And another technology I also want referred is mini tillers, which is used to in the maize farming up on the hills where large tractors can't reach, and people have stopped keeping blocks, and those small power tillers has been handy for the need of local farmers. In terms of talking about women empowerment and agency, I think that is a big question of the era. How is increasing women's involvement in agriculture is empowerment, or is it something increasing access to resources and the control over the resources, especially the productive resources like land and capital? Is that what we are talking about, empowerment, or joining the women groups formed by NGOs and talking about their management capacity and operating businesses? Is that empowerment, or helping them in terms of more gender responsive, working with them to develop some gender responsive technologies like those DSR or MTR or mini tillers, other issues? Would that what we call the empowerment? And those are quite big questions. And I think what is needed is to work with the existing situation, existing requirement of the farming communities. There is huge process of males out migration from rural areas, that they work in the city areas and they don't really do agriculture per se, and that is this phenomenon sometimes called feminization of agriculture. But whole the extension services and the extension delivery system are still targeted for farmers as a male figure, talking about those challenging technologies and all those things. So I think working like that, responding to your issue with empowering women or increasing women's access to productive resources, is definitely working with the local socio-cultural context and understanding the norm, understanding the agency, and how and what could be the best point to make interventions. I think I mean there would not be one size fits for all solution for this kind of complicated scenario. I don't know if that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. I want to kind of ask specific question about that climate smart village. This is really fascinating. Do you have any kind of, I was kind of dropped off from because my internet, any kind of specific good lessons learned or successful, including like working with women or women's group to be engaged in that climate smart village model?
Yeah, if you look for CCAP's website, they have lots of resources, including on engaging women and their outcome stories and success stories. I can let me check their website, and I'll just quickly I'll share in the chat box here.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, they have so many issues about like CCAPS is the CGIAR level climate change agricultural food security program, and they have this climate village program. And the one I showed you here in this presentation is from the last program. I think now India itself, the Indian government has funded a big program to develop Bihar as a statewide climate smart state or something. It's a big project they are working on. I'm not involved directly on there, but those climate smart thing is quite going on in South Asia, at least.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so Home has put that website on chat if people didn't notice it, so people can copy it down and check it out if they want. Okay, time for one last question before I'll turn it back over to Wayne in case there's anything more to be said from a people-to-people perspective. But as I mentioned, the recording of this will be available at www.marquisproject.com. So, and I'll send a link as well to Janice at MCIC. That'll take a little while to get that up, but we will do it. And thanks very much to Home for his presentation. Learned a lot. Good to get back into some of those issues from the fair trade world. We both the issue of gender and the issue of climate change come up in an exciting new book that I'm handing into the publisher on Friday. That'll come out in the fall. Fair Trade Handbook. I'm only one of the many authors and editors, but we will get at some of those issues from one point of view anyway. So thanks very much, Home.
You're welcome.
Anything more, Wayne, that you wanted to
I
put
see
in?
that Janice had her hand up. Did you have a question? Okay,
No,
Judy.
I was just clapping.
Okay.
It was just the little clap icon.
Judy, was there anything else from people to people?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll check with Judy and Wayne and Joseph actually about the details about sending money.
Okay. Okay.
And I'll let you know in the next week or so.
So I think we're good, Zach. Thank you very much, Home, for your presentation. That was excellent.
Very good.
Thanks a lot for this opportunity. It was great seeing you, even if virtually, everyone.
Hopefully, and sometime soon, we'll meet in each other's backyards.
Oh yeah, hopefully.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Okay.
Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye-bye.